Hey, so hello everybody, and welcome to the ABCs of persuasive copy. So if you write blog posts, ads, emails, landing pages, website copy, anything where you need to persuade people to act, you know how critical your words can be. In fact, it turns out that in marketing, as in Scrabble, some words are worth more than others. So of course, those are the words that you want to use, right? Let me give you a few quick examples. Researchers at Cornell University went into a school cafeteria, and they changed the name of the carrots to X-ray vision carrots. And they watched as the kids ate twice as many carrots, right? There's a direct marketing consultant named Gary Henneberg, and he did some work with the Collins Street Bakery. And what he found was when they stopped calling their fruitcake fruitcake and instead called it native Texas pecan cake, mail order sales shot up 60%. 60%. Oh, you don't trust me with the water, okay. I don't blame you, it's late in the day. And finally, Robert Cialdini, who's the author of Influence, Science, and Practice, reports that when the American Cancer Society added a single phrase to their solicitations, contributions increased from 28% to 50%. That single phrase was, "Even a penny will help." So clearly, words can be persuasive. The ironic reason for this is when people are reading, they don't really focus on each individual word. They're not really concentrating on what they're reading. They're not weighing the pros and cons and making considered decisions. As a matter of fact, very often what they're doing is they're relying on decision-making shortcuts. So what's a decision-making shortcut? It's an automatic, instinctive, reflexive response. Humans have developed these over the millennia as a way to conserve mental energy because we couldn't possibly weigh every bit of information before making a decision, or we'd never get around to making any. So we've developed these hardwired behaviors. We kind of cruise along through life on autopilot, and when we encounter a certain situation or what a researcher would call a stimulus, we just default to these hardwired behaviors, giving them little, if any, thought. So what I'd like to do for the next 40 minutes or so is share with you 26 words and copy constructs that trigger these automatic behaviors, that prompt these automatic actions. There's 26 of them because I've got one for each letter of the alphabet to make it a little bit easier to remember. So does that sound good? Yeah. Excellent. All right, well, let's get started. So A is for the authority principle. Ever since we were children, we have been taught to recognize and respect authority. So by the time we're adults, it's ingrained in us. And if an authority says something, we have a tendency to believe it. And if an authority tells us to do something, we have a tendency to do it. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of guys, they dressed up like bank guards, and they positioned themselves in front of an ATM at a Wells Fargo bank. And they put a sign on the ATM that said, "The ATM is broken, so give your money to the guards." And then they just stood there. And people came in, they read the sign, and most of them, without even saying a word, just turned their money over to the guards. The guards made off with thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, I know some of you are thinking, I don't care about the other 25, I have the letter I need, I'm good to go. And that's fine. But for those of you who want a more ethical way to use the authority principle in your marketing, I have a couple I want to share with you. This first one is from LL Bean. And they've got their ski parkas up there, and they say that the parkas are trusted and tested by the U.S. ski team. Well, in this context, the U.S. ski team is an expert. They're an authority, and so therefore we think the parkas are good. Or here's a B2B example. This is from Citrix. There's a section on their website that says, see what the experts are saying about Citrix. Now, obviously, on the Citrix website, there's lots of great information about Citrix. But they still know that we place more, what am I going to say? We trust more the Forresters and the Gartner. We place more weight on the reviews that they give them because they're the third-party experts, or the outside authorities. So that's how I use the authority principle. B is for because. And social scientists have found that people are more likely to do what you ask them to do if you give them a reason why. And a great way to give them a reason why is to use the word because. As a matter of fact, there was a researcher at Harvard University. Her name was Ellen Langer. And she identified the word because as a compliance trigger. She found out that when we see or hear the word because, we just immediately start to nod up and down like bobbleheads. That's a bobblehead we're looking at, okay? We just start to nod up and down like bobbleheads without fully processing what comes next. When we run into the word because, we just assume that whatever comes next is a good, logical, legitimate reason. And we comply. We say yes. So how do we use that in our marketing? Well, here's Weight Watchers. They say Weight Watchers works because it's not a diet. And here we have a financial e-newsletter, and they say, why am I getting this? Oh, you're receiving this e-newsletter because we thought this information might be beneficial to you. So it doesn't even have to be a bulletproof, ironclad reason. Just have a reason. C is for the commitment and consistency principle. What social scientists have found is once people make a decision or take a stand, they like to remain consistent with it when future opportunities arise. And they usually do so giving it very little thought. So what does this mean to us as marketers? What it means is if we can get that first yes, we're much more likely to get a second yes, a third yes, a fourth yes. This is particularly true if our first ask is relatively small. Let me share with you some of the research that went into this. A couple of researchers went out to a neighborhood in LA, and they were asking people about their opinions on safe driving. How do you feel about safe driving? And as you might imagine, people were in favor of safe driving. It's kind of hard not to be, right? So the researchers said, great, how about putting up a billboard on your front lawn saying you support safe driving? Well, here people backed off a little. Like, well, what are my neighbors going to think? Or what's it going to do to my property value? What's it going to do to my view? So very few people said yes to the billboard. Only 17% said yes. However, there was a small subsegment, and in that small subsegment, 76% of the people said yes. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what was so different about that subsegment, the people in that subsegment? Well, several weeks earlier, when researchers had come by and asked these people if they would display a small 3-inch by 3-inch sign saying they supported safe driving, these people said yes. So when the researchers came back and asked about the billboard, they weren't thinking about the billboard the way everyone else was, which is to say from square one. No, for them, the decision-making shortcut kicked in. This was consistent with their previous actions. It was consistent with the stand they took. It was consistent with how they viewed themselves and their values. So the decision-making shortcut kicked in, and they said yes. So you're probably not trying to convince people to put up billboards on their front lawn. So how do we use this in marketing? Well, here's an email, and look at the subject line. They say, thanks for your ongoing support. Want to help out again? So right in the subject line, they remind me, Nancy, you've said yes before. You usually say yes. Just say yes again. Don't think about this request as if it's coming from someone you've never done business with before. Just let that decision-making shortcut kick in. Or here's something from Ocean Mist Cosmetics. And they're offering people a Try Me kit for free because they know that anyone who says yes to the free trial is much more likely to then say yes when Ocean Mist comes back and says, now how about making a purchase? How about buying your favorite cosmetic? They get that first small yes, and then they get the momentum going, and they build from there. They start to increase their asks. All right, D is for deals. Deals are very good. They're very helpful to us as marketers. If any of you have tried to get someone to part with their money, you know how difficult that can be, right? It can be very, very difficult, and it turns out there's a very good reason for it. Science offers us this reason. It has to do with something known as the pain of paying. So let's talk about pain for just a second. Imagine I'm hammering a nail, and my hand slips and I hit my thumb instead of the nail. That's going to hurt, right? Ouch. And it registers at a particular part of my brain. Social scientists have found that that exact same part of your brain gets activated when you need to reach into your purse or your wallet, pull out your hard-earned cash, and fork it over to someone else. There is literally a pain of paying. Fortunately, there are some ways around it. One of those ways is to either avoid your use of or minimize your use of words like price, cost, pay, spend. All of these signal to the brain that there's pain coming, right? So you want to avoid those or at least minimize them. Instead of saying the price is X, you could say, for only X, you gain product Y. Gain is a very good word to use. Here's another tip. If you use coupon codes, and sometimes we like to because they incent people to buy and they allow us, of course, to track. Think about where you place that coupon code. PayPal ran a study, and they found a full 27% of page abandonment is due to the coupon code, right? Because look what happens. I decide I'm going to make the purchase decision. First question they ask me is, how many do you want? One. I want one. Next question they ask me, what's the coupon code? And I think to myself, I'm no dummy. If other people can pay less, I want to pay less, right? So what do? I start to Google. I try to find that coupon code. And then what happens? Maybe I get distracted and never make my way back. Or maybe I find a competitor I like better. So not such a good thing. Some studies I've seen have shown that if you eliminate the coupon code altogether, you can see a 34% lift in your take rate. However, you may not want to do that. You might want to keep that coupon code. If you do, I have two suggestions for you. One is maybe move it lower on the page. Get that consistency principle going. Get people to fill out this form and this one and this one, or this field and this field and this field. And by the time they get to the coupon code, they're just going to finish up. They're less inclined to go off looking. The other thing you might want to do is rename it. Don't call it a coupon code, because that makes people think they can go find one. Call it a VIP customer code. Call it a special code. Call it something that the person who's supposed to recognize it will, but somebody else won't think they can just Google it and find it. E is for eye magnet words. Now let's think about this for a second. When we write, We write in a very different way than we read. When we write in a very linear fashion. One word followed by the next, followed by the next. But that's not how we read. When we read, we skim and we scan. And certain words literally have the power to leap up off the screen, grab our attention, and attract it. Okay? That's why I call them eye magnet words, because they attract attention like a magnet. There's been a lot of research into this. There have been in-market tests. There have been heat mapping studies, eye tracking studies. Neuroscientists actually put people into fMRI machines, flash different words in front of their faces, and look to see what parts of their brains light up. In all of this research, from the most simple to the most sophisticated, all proves that some words have the power to attract the human eye. So what are those words, you might be wondering? Well, I'm going to share some with you. One of them is the word easy. As a matter of fact, Robert Levine, in his book, The Power of Persuasion, explains that easy, quick, and improved have all individually lifted product sales in market. You don't even have to use them together. Easy, quick, and improve have all individually lifted product sales in market. Another great eye magnet word, the word secret. The reason for this? Social scientists have found that people are more persuaded by information they believe is not readily available. People are more persuaded by information they believe is not readily available. And secret is a great way to suggest that you've got information that's not readily available. World Data ran a study. They found if you use secret in your subject line, you can expect an 11% lift in opening rates. F is for framing. And what social scientists have found is the words that we use and the order that we put them in can make a very big difference in terms of how people absorb information and how they respond to it, how they react to it. There's a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus, and she ran an experiment that proved this. She had people watch a video of a car accident. Everyone watched the video of the car accident. Then she divided them into two groups. And she asked one group to estimate how fast they thought the cars were going when they crashed. And she asked the other group to estimate how fast they thought the cars were going when they contacted. Well, the crashed group estimated 40.8 miles per hour. The contacted group estimated 31.8 miles per hour. This is a difference of over 28%. Everybody saw the same video. Everybody was asked the same question. The only difference was the verb, and that verb influenced how they perceived the information. So how do we use this? Well, maybe you charge a shipping fee. Not a great thing to do because people don't like to pay them, but sometimes we have to, right? And in this case, it's only $5. That's not a lot, right? So you can call it a $5 fee, or you could call it a small $5 fee. What's the difference, you might ask? Well, according to research that was reported in the Journal of Consumer Research, the difference is 20%. If you frame this as a small $5 fee, you get a 20% increase in terms of people responding. It's the same $5, but just calling it, framing it a small fee, increased response. Another great opportunity for framing, yes-no buttons. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is human beings inherently don't like to say no. We're kind of hardwired to be social creatures. We don't really like to say no. So if there's simply a button, we either click the button or we don't. If we don't, it's kind of a passive way of saying no. But if there's two buttons, it kind of forces us to choose. And now here's where it gets interesting, because what you want to do is you want to put copy on that no button that frames the consequences of not saying yes. Frame the consequences of not saying yes. So here we have, yes, send me my free case study now, versus, nah, I'd rather not know how my marketing is performing. Well, when you put it that way, maybe I should get the case study, right? So according to research that was reported in the new neuromarketing blog, which comes out of the Netherlands, you can expect anywhere between a 40 and a 125% lift in conversion by using yes-no buttons. All right, G is for guarantee, and guarantee is a really powerful word. It's a really good word for us to have at our disposal as content marketers, because guarantees remove risk. And the number one thing that stands in the way of people doing something is often risk. So guarantees remove risk. As a matter of fact, LL Bean is a big believer in guarantees. Over 100 years ago, they launched their company with the 100% satisfaction guarantee, and they've stood by this all these years later. But the good news is you don't have to even offer a 100% satisfaction guarantee. You can still harness the power of guarantees. For example, you can tie your guarantee to an outcome, like Nutrisystems. They say lose 5 pounds and 1 inch off your waist in your first week, guaranteed or your money back. So this will happen, or you get your money back. But if this happens, you don't get your money back. Or you can put a time limit. You can have a 60-day unconditional money-back guarantee. But what happens is people see unconditional money back, and it tempers the fact that it's time-limited, that it's only 30 days or 60 days or 45 days. So there are different ways that you can use guarantees and still get the power of them. H is for herd mentality. And another name for herd mentality is social proof, which Andy just mentioned, as a matter of fact. But basically, what social scientists have found is when people are not sure what to do, when they're uncertain of the decision to make, they look to others, particularly others like themselves, and they follow their lead. It's a very common decision-making shortcut. And there were a couple of researchers in South Carolina that proved this. They posed as fictitious charity solicitors, solicitors for a fictitious charity, and they went to a neighborhood and they went door to door collecting for this fictitious charity. And what they would do is they'd walk up to the front door, they'd ring the doorbell, they would describe the charity, and they would ask for a donation. And what they found was when they asked for the donation, they would show people the list of people who had already donated. And the longer that list was, the more likely the person in front of them would be to donate. Shorter list, not so much. Longer list, yes. Again, very common decision-making shortcut. I'm not really sure what to do. Let's see what other people around here have done, right? And we just follow their lead. Herd mentality. So here's Staples. They use this in a couple of ways. They say customers like you bought, or popular categories and services, a double hit of herd mentality. Or there's a private online shopping club called Beyond the Rack. And they were having a sale on Coach bags. So I was like, oh, well, who can't use another Coach bag, right? So I rush over to the site, and I find out that there's 3 of them available. But for me, there were only 2, because the one on the left was reserved by others. So which one do you suppose I wanted? I want the one on the left that everyone else has, right? But they held out a little hope. They said, reserved by others, check back in 12 minutes. Not 10 minutes, not 15 minutes, 12. So finite, so exact. They made me think maybe, just maybe. And you know, if I went back and it was available, I'd absolutely buy it so that I could be like everyone else. I could be one of the popular kids and have the bag everyone else had. Really good use of herd mentality. I is for information gap theory. And this is a phrase that was coined by a neuroeconomist named George Lowenstein. What Lowenstein found was if there is a gap between what you know and what you want to know, you'll take action to close the gap. If there's a gap between what you know and what you want to know, you will take action to close that gap. And a great way to tee up the idea of information gap theory is to use the 5 W's and the 1 H. Where are my journalism students in the audience, right? You guys know the 5 W's and the 1 H, right? Sure. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. If you use those words, it uncovers the information gap, and it prompts people to take action, to find out what they don't know. So what you want to do is you want to use them in high-read pieces of real estate, like your content titles, like your headlines, like your subject lines. So we have, who are the year's best-loved brands? What's your MarTech IQ? Where's the birthplace of wine? When not to A/B test your mobile app? Why an online marketing suite is a game changer, and finally, how to give a killer presentation. So who, what, where, when, why, and how. That makes people curious. Those are words that make people curious, make people realize that there's information that they don't have that they want. All right, J is for jargon. And generally speaking, we want to avoid jargon. Sometimes we think, oh, we're going to use acronyms and technical terms and big multisyllabic words because that's going to make us sound impressive. But often it just makes us sound pretentious. And we can lose readers that way. We can lose our audience because nobody wants to feel stupid. Nobody wants to struggle to understand something. So you're much better off just keeping it simple, keeping it easy to understand. In fact, my rule of thumb is don't use a 75-cent word when a 25-cent word will do. Don't use a 75-cent word when a 25-cent word will do. Although I do have 2 exceptions to this rule. 2 times when you might want to use that 75-cent word. One is if you're trying to suggest more value. And the second is if you're trying to imply insider status. So I'm going to show you an example of each. So here we've got a dental office. They're trying to attract patients to come in and do some tooth whitening. And they offer a savings certificate. Now, they really could have called it a coupon, right? But a certificate just sounds a little bit nicer, a little bit more valuable. When I was a Cub copywriter, I did some work for American Express, and they never let us use coupon. It was always savings certificate. And you still understand it. It's not so complicated that you don't. Other time you might want to use that 75-cent word and drop into acronym land is if you're trying to convey insider status, okay? Here we've got the Can't Miss CRO event of 2017. You see that, and if you're a conversion rate optimization person, you think, these are my people, my squad, my tribe. I'm going to be there with people like me, like-minded. We're going to be speaking the same language and sharing, inside information, and it's going to be great. But if this conference had wanted to expand their audience and go beyond the people that they usually attract and get out into some more general marketers, they would have been better off spelling that out and not using the acronym so that they wouldn't risk making somebody feel like they weren't sure what it was all about. All right, K is for knowledge. And the thing that we have to remember is when people read our content, when they consume our content, they bring with them their own knowledge of it, okay? And it could be deep knowledge, it could be shallow knowledge, it could be correct knowledge or incorrect knowledge. But either way, people are going to bring what they already know. It's going to color their perception of what they're currently consuming. What they already know about the topic is going to color their consumption of what they're reading. Basically, people bring their own baggage. As a matter of fact, social scientists have a phrase called availability bias, and it's really very interesting. What they found is people will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how readily they can recall an example. People will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how readily they can recall an example. So if you're someone who doesn't fly, you might likely think that flying is more dangerous than it is. Why? Because the media reports about not the safe landings, the millions and millions and millions of those, because that's not news. The media reports about the plane crashes, the fatalities, the casualties. And based on that information that's available to you, it's going to color your perspective and your perception. You're probably going to think it's far more dangerous to fly than it is. So, okay, what does this have to do with marketing? Well, people will judge the likelihood of an event happening, and in this case, the event happening is their need for what it is you're offering based on how readily they can recall an example. So before you ask them to buy, first get them to think of a time in the past when your product or service would have really come in handy, or even imagine a time in the future when they can see it fitting into their life or their work style. So here's a few examples, a couple of examples. This first one is from the American Dental Association, and they're trying to convince dentists to buy disability insurance. The problem is, when you're healthy, when you're not disabled, you don't think you need disability insurance. So what they said was, have you heard your colleagues complain about low back pain, carpal tunnel syndrome? Right away, people start to think, oh yeah, at the last ADA meeting that I went to, Dr. Smith from across town wasn't there. Somebody said he was laid up in bed with back pain. Wow, if it could happen to him, it could happen to me, right? Good use of availability bias. Or here's something from the Boston Globe, and they were trying to get their subscribers to buy gift subscriptions to bostonglobe.com. But they didn't say, hey, buy a gift subscription to bostonglobe.com. Or don't you know somebody who'd like a gift subscription to bostonglobe.com? No, instead they said, bostonglobe.com is an incredible gift for your, and then they listed 10 different descriptors. Your avid reader, your political junkie, your sports fan. And as you read each of those 10, you slotted in the name of the person that you knew that matched that description. My grandfather is an avid reader. My uncle's a political junkie. My daughter away at college is a sports fan. The next thing you know, you have come to the conclusion that you know at least 10 people that might want a bostonglobe.com gift subscription. Really good use of availability bias. Right, L is for loss aversion. And if anyone who caught Tim's class a couple of sessions ago got a little bit of an education in loss aversion. But basically, what social scientists have found is people are twice as motivated to avoid the pain of loss as we are to achieve the pleasure of gain. We're twice as motivated to avoid the pain of loss as we are to achieve the pleasure of gain. And this is a little counterintuitive to us as marketers, because in marketing, we're all about the advantages, the benefits, the wonderful things that will happen if you'll just do what I'm asking you to do, right? If you'll just download the white paper, if you'll just attend the webinar, if you'll just buy my product or sign up for my service. We're all about benefits. And I would never tell you to walk away from benefits, because benefits are very important. But a little well-placed loss aversion can be very, very important, because people feel those losses twice as powerfully. Imagine you're in Vegas and you're playing the slot machines in the casino, and you win $100. So that feels pretty good. And maybe for you, on a scale of 1 to 10, it feels like a 5, right? If you lost that same $100, or it wouldn't be a -5. It would register as a -10. We would feel the pain twice as powerfully, and therefore we're twice as motivated to avoid it. So how do we use this in our marketing? Well, here we've got target marketing. They want people to sign up for their newsletter. But they don't say, take advantage of your daily dose of marketing goodness. They don't say, sign up for your daily dose of marketing goodness. They say, don't miss your daily dose of marketing goodness. Just those two little words, don't miss, are enough to trigger that notion of loss aversion. You want to tell people, the bad stuff that you can avoid if you do what I ask you to do, or you want to tell them about the bad stuff that will happen if they don't do what you're asking them to do. Here's another example, and this is one of my favorites because they combine loss aversion with something known as the endowment effect. This is from a company called Lot 18, and they say, you have $15 of unused credit in your account that will expire tomorrow at 11:59. Okay? So the endowment effect means that we place greater value on things that are already ours, things that we already own. So what they're doing is they're tying loss aversion and the endowment effect together. They could have said, hey, make a purchase by 11:59 tomorrow, and you can take $15 off of it, right? Save $15 if you buy by 11:15 or 11:59. But no, instead they said, we've put $15 of credit in your account. Now it's yours. But if you don't spend it by tomorrow, you're going to lose it. And suddenly, now that it's ours, it's more valuable to us. It's not the same thing as they're giving me a discount if I make a purchase. No, they're taking away my $15 if I don't make a purchase. Very, very powerful combination of loss aversion and the endowment effect. All right, M is for mental energy. And the thing that we have to remember about mental energy is we want people to expend as little of it as possible understanding our message and acting on it. Okay? We want them to expend as little of it as possible. That's why the old keep it simple, stupid phrase is a good thing to remember. Or if you're a very nice person and don't like to call people stupid, you could say keep it short and simple. Social scientists have a larger term for this. They call it cognitive fluency. What they found is people prefer things that are easier to think about and easier to understand. Not only do they prefer them, they feel more confident in their ability to make a decision about them. And that's why cognitive fluency is so important to us. I want to show a couple of examples. This one comes to us from Copy Hackers. I don't know if Joanna is still here, but they reported about a button copy test that they did for one of their clients. It was a fashion retailer. The fashion retailer wanted people to sign up for a newsletter that they were offering. So they tested Sign Up Now against Show Me Outfits I'll Love. And they report that Show Me Outfits I'll Love outpulled Sign Up Now by 123.9%. And the reason I think that it did so well is they made the benefit of clicking that button abundantly clear. I knew exactly what was going to happen if I clicked it. It made it easy for me to understand. If I click this, they're going to be sending me outfits I love. That sounds great. They made it simple. They made it easy. I didn't have to think a lot. Another example, this comes from Adlucent. They have a client that sells pet supplies. And so they had a bunch of different landing pages going. They had optimized this one particular one. It was doing really, really well. And they decided to take a final look at it to see if there was anything else they could do to remove anything extraneous, any extraneous copy, anything that might be distracting. They did that. They went through the exercise, and they got a 233% better conversion rate off of an already really good, really well-performing landing page. All right, N is for new. And the human brain is hardwired to crave news and novelty. We're hardwired to crave news and novelty. And the reason for this is when we find something new, it activates the reward center in our brain, and that releases dopamine. And that, of course, feels good. So we're constantly on the hunt for the next new thing. We're jonesing for that next hit of dopamine, because when we think we found something that might be new, our brain releases the dopamine, and it feels really good. So we focus on the new and the novel. We're always looking for it. So if you have news, use it. Maybe it's a new product. Maybe it's a new use for your product. Maybe it's a new update on something that's existing. But if you have news, definitely use it. The other thing you want to do is you want to use the word new, but also the entire family of new words. So we have new. We have now, introducing, announcing, finally, soon. New, now, introducing, announcing, finally, soon. These are all the family of the new words, and the I goes to them because the brain is craving things that are new, and this signals that there's something new on the horizon. If you're looking for a verb, how about discover? Much better than learn. Learn is arduous. Learn sounds like a lot of work. Discover sounds like fun. I'm going to discover something together. This is great. All right, O. O is for overcoming objections. And the thing that we have to remember is when we put some of our content out there, there's going to be a segment of our audience that's like, thank goodness, oh my God, this is exactly what I was looking for. And they're going to be very, very happy. There's going to be a larger group of people that are a little reticent, okay? They have some reservations. They're wondering, I don't know, is it as good as the marketer says it is? Is it any better than my current solution? Is it worth the time and energy for me to find out? Would it be worth the effort to switch? These are the questions that they have. You know, they're just not entirely sure. They're going to have some barriers to making a decision. And what we need to do is we need to hit those reservations head on, and we need to flip them. We need to build into our content the argument that overcomes those objections. Essentially, we need to take lemons and make lemonade with them. Let me show you a couple examples. The first one is from Target Marketing. They're offering Denny Hatch's ultimate 83-point marketing checklist. And you might say, gee, that sounds great, but I know Denny Hatch, and he's an old direct mail guy, right? And I don't do direct mail. But look what they say. No matter if your message is running in email or direct mail, online or on TV, you're going to find stuff here that's going to drive a profitable bottom line. You know, they hit that head on. You might be thinking this isn't for you because he only does direct mail. Well, you're wrong. It's for anyone who does direct mail, email, online, ads, whatever. Or maybe you're trying to get someone to sign up, right? Here's where the rubber meets the road. It's like, all right, choose your membership. And somebody might be thinking, I don't know if I want to make this commitment. 1 month, 3 months, I'm not even sure I want to. So if you can say something like, well, you can cancel at any time. That removes the barrier, right? It overcomes the objection. All right, P is for personalization. We love our own names, okay? Our names remind us of ourselves, and frankly, we're not interested in anyone else as much as we are interested in ourselves, all right? We're very interested in ourselves, and so when we see our names, our eye immediately goes to it. Our names are eye magnet words for us. But it doesn't even stop there, okay? the data shows that you are more likely to donate to a hurricane relief fund if the first letter of the hurricane's name matches the first letter of your name. Okay, the data doesn't lie. Data don't lie. Now, if I had asked you why would you donate to a hurricane relief fund, you'd probably have all kinds of really good reasons, right? But I doubt anyone would have been like, oh, Nancy, Nancy, choose me, choose me. If the first letter of the hurricane's name matches the first letter of my name, I'm in, right? But it's true. You're more likely to do a favor for someone if they share your same first name or a similar first name. And you're 12% more likely to choose a spouse whose first name begins with the same first initial as yours than if name similarity had no effect on things. So we love our names. Our names are really important to us. We have this incredible relationship with them. So if you have the opportunity to use somebody's name, do so. In fact, if you're sending out an email and you can personalize the subject line, Experian found you could expect a 29.3% lift in opening rates. And I say don't stop there. Personalize your subject line, personalize your imagery, personalize your content, and don't stop with the name, right? You can use all kinds of demographic and psychographic information. You can use self-reported data. You can use past purchase behavior. There's so much data out there. Here's Neil Patel. He says, hey, I'm determined to make a business in Newtonville successful. Hey, wow, I live in Newtonville. That should be me, right? Like, I immediately have this affinity for it. Social scientists talk about the principle of liking. If there's something that reminds you of yourself, you place greater value on it. So, somebody's name, where they live, where they work, what their industry is, where they went to school, all of these things are great to personalize. All right, Q is for questions, and questions are wonderful. They're great devices for us because questions are engaging and they're involving. In fact, if you use a question in your subject line, you can expect an 11% lift in your opening rates based on data that World Data collected. But it's not just questions and subject lines. Just generally speaking, BI Norwegian School of Business found that questions outperform declarative sentences by 140 to 150%. You get a 140 to 150% lift in engagement by using a question instead of a declarative sentence. So let's just rock it back to English class for a second. A declarative sentence would be something like, wine may improve your memory. And then, of course, the question version is, does wine improve your memory? Right? Well, questions are very involving. They pull people in. So use questions. But here are 2 words of caution. When you're using a question, try not to ask a question that has a yes-no answer. Because if somebody says no, you've lost them, right? So here's Matt Hines. He says, scale of 1 to 5, how bad do your sales presentations suck? Right? He didn't say, do your sales presentations suck? No, he's like, scale of 1 to 5. He pulls you in. So you pick a number and you're there. The other thing with questions is questions can be very, very helpful if you need to kind of tread into a topic that's a little bit more difficult, right? Something that people don't necessarily want to talk about. Here's something from Vanguard, and their question is, how many people have opened a retirement account by your age? Now, the truth is, very few of us have enough money saved for retirement. That's just an industry fact, but who the heck wants to hear that, right? Like, we don't want to talk about that. We don't want to hear about that. But by Vanguard posing it as a question, they kind of invite people in. They open the door, and then it gives them the platform to deliver the information that they want to deliver, which is you need to save more money, right? But questions can be very handy in that way. R is for rational and emotional. And what we have to remember is people make decisions for emotional reasons. And then they later justify them to themselves as well as to other people with the rational reasons. And this is true in B2B as well as in B2C. People make decisions for emotional reasons. So what it means to us as content marketers, content creators, is we need to include both rational and emotional selling points, rational and emotional bits of information. Antonio Damasio is a researcher. He did some research among people who had sustained injury to the parts of their brain that control emotion. What he found was these people were virtually incapable of making a decision. Even a decision as simple as what they wanted for lunch that day. Virtually incapable. So we need both the emotional and the rational sides of our brain. And so you want to put both of those into your content and your marketing messages. For example, here we've got something from BMW. They say, drive a brand new BMW to the beach or your next barbecue for only $237 a month. So first they lead with the emotion, like, you're going to imagine those admiring glances as you pull up at the barbecue and people are thinking, wow, that looks great. And then, oh, by the way, it's $237. You've got to be able to afford it, right? But they've got the emotional and the rational. Or here we've got an ad for presentation skills. And what they do is they lead with the emotional. They say, become the presenter everyone listens to. Nail your next presentation. And then later they talk about the fact that, effective presentation skills are important because they help you deliver your message and do it in a concise, effective way. But they lead with some of that emotion before they get into the rational. S is for storytelling. And storytelling is kind of a buzzword these days in our industry, but with good reason. Storytelling works. It's incredibly effective. In fact, back before the written word, stories were how information was passed on from generation to generation. Stories are great. Stories are involving. It's a guy who wrote, I can't think of the name of the book now. Son of a gun. It'll come to me. But anyway, his point was stories are involving, stories are engaging, and stories allow you to draw your own conclusion. And while you might argue with what somebody else tells you, you rarely argue with your own conclusion. Okay? I think the book was called Persuasive Writing, if I'm not mistaken. But it's very interesting, right? Stories involve you, you come to your own conclusion, and you don't argue with yourself, right? So there are a number of reasons why storytelling is very, very effective. I want to turn to science for a second, because science offers a very good one. Science explains that when you're dealing with facts and figures, if I had nothing but bullet points on the screen, it would activate two areas of your brain, Broca's area and Wernicke's area. Those are the two areas that are responsible for processing language. But if you're listening to a story, if you're reading a story, other parts of your brain get involved, right? So if you read that somebody ran across the stage, that would activate your motor cortex. If I told you a story and I said, this morning I woke up to the smell of freshly brewed coffee and that wonderful aroma, that would activate the olfactory cortex in your brain. The net here is the more parts of your brain that are activated, the better you understand the information and the longer you retain it. And those are two great reasons why storytelling is so effective, so important to us as content marketers. And videos, of course, are almost a tailor-made channel or medium for delivering stories, although there are many, many different ways to deliver stories. And I think this morning Joanna was talking about the first-person narrative and how important it is. Here's where that first person, that the I construction really comes in. So if you had gone to JetBlue at one point, you would have been able to choose from 4 different personal stories. And if you happen to click on the one on the left called Space, you would have heard from a woman named Ariana Cohen. And in her story, she would explain to you that she does a lot of traveling. She's a woman. She happens to be 6 foot 3 inches tall. She talks about what it's like to fly across country, kind of jammed into the plane seat with her knees shoved up against a tray table and the seat in front of her, and just how unbelievably unpleasant that is. And then she talked about how happy she was when JetBlue introduced greater leg space. And when you hear her tell that story, it stays with you so much longer than if you had just gone to the JetBlue website and there was a little bullet point that said, we now have more legroom, right? Stories stay with you. They involve you. The other thing that stories do is they can add value to a product or a service. There was something called the Significant Objects Project. It was a couple of journalists who actually became researchers. And what they did is they ran around to flea markets and yard sales and tag sales, and they bought up all the stuff people wanted to get rid of. And then they hired writers, and they had writers write stories about each of these individual objects. And then they took the object and the story, and they put it for sale on eBay. And they were very upfront about the fact that the story wasn't supposed to be factual. It was, in fact, a story. And then they got this tremendous return on their investment. This was a Utah snow globe. They bought it for 99 cents. They sold it for $59. Like an incredible return on investment. They didn't do it for the money. They donated the proceeds to charity. They did it to prove that stories can add value. Stories can add value to products, to services, to companies, to people. All right, T is for time. And what we need to remember here is people will spend far less time consuming our content than we spend creating it. They spend far less time consuming our content than we spend creating it. As a matter of fact, Nielsen Norman Group ran a study, and they found that on the average web page, about 28% of the words are actually consumed. Only 28%. So what does that mean to us as content marketers? Well, it means we need to take this into account as we're writing, as we're creating our content. So we don't want to bury the lead. All right? If we have something important to say it and say it up front. Don't put it in the second paragraph, the third paragraph. Don't have this really long wind-up. People may not get to it. Right? Don't bury your lead. Be clear and concise. Take as much time as you need to explain your story, but don't go beyond that. Okay? Be clear and concise. Clarity is going to trump cute and clever every time. Don't make people work too hard for it. They're busy. They're multitasking. Their attention is divided. Be very clear about what you want to say. And finally, use bullets, subheads, bolds, list. Okay? The human brain craves ease and order. List and bullets, they promise ease and order. Numbers promise ease and order. So use those. It makes it easier for the brain to absorb the information. People who are time-pressed gravitate to layouts like that. All right, U is for urgency, and urgency is one half of the scarcity principle. What social scientists have found is if something is readily available, you may or may not be interested. If you're interested, you take advantage of it. If you're not, you don't. It's that simple, right? But just tell us that that something is only available in finite quantities, or it's only available for a certain amount of time, and that can change everything. It's like a switch flips in us, and it makes us want that something and want it badly. And that's known as urgency. And urgency can be a really big driver. In fact, does anyone remember a few years ago, Hostess decided to discontinue Twinkies, right? and there was this like incredible outcry. There was actually a single box of Twinkies on sale on eBay. The opening bid was $200,000 for one box of Twinkies, right? Hostess ended up bringing them back on market because so many people said they wanted them. Same thing happened when the Concorde decided they weren't going to fly anymore. As soon as they announced that, every last available seat sold out. And the reason they said they weren't going to fly anymore was because they weren't getting enough business. But when something is scarce, when time is running out, it makes people want to act. So here we have Expedia. They say they've only got 7 tickets left at this price. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't find another ticket from Boston to Cancun, but if you want to get one at this price, you'd better act quickly because there are only 7 left. Tick-tock, tick-tock, right? Here we've got Neil Patel again. For just a very limited time, you can enroll in his class. If you have a deadline, if you have an expiration date, absolutely use it, trumpet it, because that's a great way to drive urgency. But we don't always have expiration dates and deadlines. So in that case, you want to say something like, for just a limited time, or no guarantee this offer will be repeated. Please respond this week. Kind of create urgency, even if you don't have a finite deadline. V is for the von Restorff effect. And what social scientists have found is the human brain is hardwired to notice things that are different. We're hardwired to notice things that are different. This goes back to our caveman days when we'd get up in the morning, we'd stick our head out of the cave, we'd scan the horizon, and if everything looked like it did yesterday, that was a very good thing. But if something were new, or if something were missing, that could pose a threat. In fact, it could be life-threatening. All these years later, we're still trained, we're still hardwired to notice things that are different, that are unusual, that are out of place. That's why when you look at this ad, your eye goes right to the kid's smile, to the missing tooth. Something's not there that should be there. We right away gravitate to that. I'm going to share with you 2 quick ways that you can use the von Restorff effect just in your emails. One is use an emoji. You can get a 31 to a 34% lift in opening rates simply by having an emoji. This is based on data from World Data, but this will change. The more people that start to use emojis, the lower those rates are going to be, because if there were several emojis in this screen grab, they would essentially cancel each other out. But because there's only that single red heart, your eye goes right to it. The other way that you can use the von Restorff effect is those oops, we made a mistake emails. Okay, these are the inbox equivalent of rubbernecking on the highway, right? You're driving on the highway, oh, there's an accident over there. What's that all about? Got to slow down and check it out. You get one of these, and you didn't even read the first email. That's how uninterested in it you were. But then this one shows up, and you're like, oh my God, what did they send me that they shouldn't have sent me? Who screwed up? What did they say? What am I not supposed to know? It's human nature. And at last count, they were pulling an unheard of 47% opening rate. So pretty interesting example of the von Restorff effect. All right, W is for wordplay. And as writers, we should know that we have certain literary devices available to us that either make our writing more attention-getting, or more credible, or easier to understand, or more memorable. And so we should use these. And there are a number of them out there. We have time to just quickly touch upon 3 of them: rhyme, simile, and surprise. So rhyme, there's actually something known as rhyme as reason bias. What social scientists have found is if you have 2 sentences that essentially say the same thing, one of them rhymes, the other one doesn't, people will judge the rhyming phrase to be the more truthful, more accurate phrase. It's because rhymes are easier for the brain to process, and if it's easier to process, it just feels more right? It feels right. It feels like it must be true. So a little well-placed rhyme might be a good thing. Similes. Similes are comparisons using the word like or as. Similes are really good if you're introducing a new product that people are unfamiliar with, or if you've got a more abstract product that you're trying to make more concrete. So here we have crazy egg is like a pair of X-ray glasses. Well, I might not know what crazy egg is, but I get what X-ray glasses are. And so this makes an unusual or a more abstract idea more concrete. And that's good, because the better I understand something, the better I feel about making a decision regarding it. Excuse me. And then our final one is surprise. And there were researchers at University College in London, and what they found was the human brain is hardwired to predict what comes next. We're hardwired to predict what comes next. So look at that subject line. It says dress to chill. But we would have expected it to say dress to kill, because that's what the phrase is, right? Dress to kill. So something really interesting happens. You're reading, and you're like dress to, and your brain immediately fills in kill, and then you read chill, and you go, oh, it's chill. Ha, surprise. So 2 things happen, though. Your brain comes away with the idea that these clothes that are being advertised are great to chill out in, to laze around in, but you're going to look killer when you're wearing them, because your brain substituted, filled in the word first before you actually got to it. So when you're surprised, a couple of things happen. When you're surprised, your attention is focused, and your emotions are intensified by about 400%. Both of those two things contribute to recall and memory. You're more likely to remember something in that state. All right, X is for the X factor. And I know some of you were wondering, is she ever going to get to X? And others of you might have been wondering, and if she does, what the heck is she going to say, right? X, I don't know. So in the context of today's presentation, which is about words, the X factor is visuals, okay? Because there are certain visuals that can make your copy more credible. And so we should talk about those, okay? Visuals are interesting. If you think about it, about 90% of the information the brain consumes is visual. Pictures were around way before words were. As a result, the human brain finds pictures much easier to process. The human brain processes imagery much faster than words. So even though I'm a writer at heart, pictures can be our friends. And here are just two quick tips regarding imagery. One is human beings are hardwired to follow eye gaze. Okay, like later on at the break, you'll probably be talking to somebody, and if they look off to the side, you will automatically, instinctively, reflexively look off to the side. You won't think about it, you'll just do it automatically. We're hardwired to follow eye gaze. So use pictures of somebody looking where you want your reader or your viewer to look. All right? In this case, chemistry.com wants you to look at that form because they want you to fill it out. If she were looking in the opposite direction, it would be taking you away from it. If she were looking down, it would be taking you down off the page. So use eye gaze to direct people to your headline, to your price, to your offer, to the form that you want them to fill out. Direct people's gaze that way. The other thing you want to consider doing is using charts and graphs. Cornell University ran a study. They asked people to read a piece of copy and evaluate it and say, it's about a new drug that's coming out. What do you think about this new drug? Do you think it'll be effective? Do you believe what you just read? 67% of the people said yes. They repeated the study, but they included a graph or a chart. That 67% number climbed to 97%. And the researchers concluded that it wasn't that the chart added additional information. It wasn't that the chart made the information in the text easier to understand. It was simply the presence of the chart. It signaled something known as scientific veracity or scientific truthfulness. It's like, oh, there's a chart. It must be true. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time looking at the chart, but the chart is there. The mere presence of the chart made it more credible, made the copy more credible. So I'm not suggesting that you make up charts and graphs, but a lot of times our content does lend itself to a chart or a graph. Do that, and you got instant credibility. All right, Y is for the word you, and Copyblogger actually lists you as one of the top 5 persuasive words in the English language. You is important because you is a substitute for your name. We talked earlier about the principle of liking. We talked about how your name is an eye magnet for you. Well, if you can't use somebody's name, the word you is a good substitute. And we have to remember WIFM, right? What's in it for me? People really aren't interested in your product or your service or your company, but they might be interested in what it can do for them. So always create you-centered copy that's about your user and not about your company. Here we've got an email from Neighborhood Health Plan, but each of their 3 bullets begins with you or you and your employees. They don't say, our health plan does this, at our company we do this, okay? Because we kind of gloss right over that. We don't care about we are our company, but our eye does go to you. So go for you. Like, by comparison, look at the subject line, Banana Republic. We've never looked better. I don't really care how you look. I care about how I look if I'm going to shop there, right? It's all about me. That's how it works. All right. And Z is for the Zeigarnik effect. What social scientists have found is human beings are hardwired to finish what we've started. We're hardwired to finish what we started because if we leave something unfinished, it just hangs there in our memories, and it creates this like nagging, like, oh my gosh, we want to finish this, we want to get to the end of it. It's why cliffhangers in the media do so well. We couldn't wait for the next series of House of Cards to come out. Most recently, we couldn't wait for the next episodes of Stranger Things to come out, right? We couldn't wait, and then we started to binge watch as soon as they did, right? We want to find out how does it end or what happens next. We want that conclusion. So how do we use the Zeigarnik effect in marketing? Well, here's Snapfish, and they say, hey, are you ready to finish your photo card? You started it, but you didn't quite finish. You're almost done. Come on back and finish it. They nudge me. They remind me. And now I keep thinking about it. Like, I've got to get there. I want to cross it off my list. I want to finish it. Or maybe you want to run a loyalty program. It could be online. It could be offline. It doesn't make a difference. But the typical kind is, make 9 purchases, and you'll get the 10th one for free. So you can do one of 2 things. You can have a punch card with 9 blank boxes and say, look, get each one of these checked, and then you'll get something for free. Or you can have 10 boxes, but you could pre-check that first one. In both cases, the person has 9 boxes to check, right? But 9 blank ones, 10 with 1 already checked. They still have 9 to check. Researchers at Wharton and University of Southern California found that if you pre-check that first box, people are 79% more likely to complete the rest of the boxes, okay? That's the Zeigarnik effect. So we have blown through 26 different words and copy constructs that will instantly make you more persuasive. If anyone wants a cheat sheet that quickly summarizes all of these in a very cognitively fluent fashion, I might add, just give me your business card at the end of the session. I'd be happy to email it to you. Thank you very much. I think we're probably right about ready to quit, although I'll be around for questions if anyone has any.
Everybody, let's hear it for Nancy.